The first time my father disowned me, he didn't raise his voice. That's what people don't expect. No shouting, no tears, no slammed doors. Just a calm, surgical sentence delivered across a polished dining table like a death certificate. "You are a liability to this family name," he said, folding his napkin with practiced precision. "And effective immediately. You are out of the will." I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I was 6 months pregnant, wearing a thrift store coat that still smelled faintly of someone else's perfume, my hands resting instinctively over my stomach as if my body already knew it was about to be pushed into survival mode. Instead of speaking, I reached into my bag and placed a small cardboard box on the placemat in front of him. No words. No explanation. Just the box that he didn't open it. He didn't have to. He pushed it back toward me like it was contaminated. Security walked me out of the house I grew up in while my father remained seated, already mentally rewriting the story so he was the victim and I was the mistake. Before I tell you what was inside that box, and how it destroyed his life 7 years later, drop a comment. And tell me something else too. Where are you watching from right now? I want to see how far this story travels. Because 7 years is a long time to stay angry. But it's also the exact amount of time required to build a portfolio capable of swallowing a man whole. Back then, I was a shivering pregnant girl standing under flickering fluorescent lights, comparing prices on baby formula and wondering how someone could erase their own daughter so cleanly. 7 years later, I was 29 years old, standing in a glass-walled office overlooking the financial district. Skyline. My name etched in steel on the lobby directory beneath a company most people had never heard of. VM Holdings. No inheritance. No bailout. No second chances. Just discipline, patience, and an education paid for in humiliation. I didn't chase flashy startups or risky tech plays. I specialized in something far less glamorous and far more powerful. Distressed debt acquisition, bad loans, forgotten notes, obligations banks were too embarrassed to talk about and too tired to fight over. Debt is honest. It doesn't care about reputation. It doesn't respect family names. IT only cares who owns it. And one night, scrolling through a spreadsheet that looked like 1,000 others, I saw a name I recognized. Not a hit list, a balance sheet. GBU Construction, my father's company, was bleeding red at the top of the page. 3 failed commercial projects. Over-leveraged bridge loans. Variable interest rates chewing through cash flow like acid. He was brilliant at handshakes and catastrophic at managing money once the room emptied. Interest was eating him alive. But in his mind, he wasn't failing. He was fighting a bad economy. Bad timing. Bad luck. What he didn't know, what made it almost poetic, was that the invisible hand squeezing his windpipe belonged to the daughter he had thrown out like a rounding error. There was no magic. No revenge fantasy. Just business. I called the vice presidents at 3 small community banks holding his overdue notes. Not threats. Not ultimatums. Just calm conversations. They were frustrated, exhausted, terrified that defaults would stain their quarterly reports. I offered to buy the toxic debt at 60 cents on the dollar. They thanked me. They signed the papers. $450,000 in total obligations transferred with a few clicks and a wire confirmation. Not a fortune on Wall Street, but enough to bury a man who had leveraged his reputation to lease his luxury car. He was drowning, and I was the only one holding the life preserver. And the box he never opened. That was just the beginning. That I didn't contact my father directly. That would have been a mistake. Instead, I paid a lawyer, very well, to be the face. A neutral voice. Clean suit. A man my father could underestimate without even trying. The kind of intermediary that makes people assume the real power is sitting somewhere else, bored and faceless. The moment the notice hit Gavin's desk, he did exactly what I knew he would. He asked for a restructuring meeting. When the email came through, I smiled. Not a happy smile. The kind a hunter wears when they hear the trap snap closed somewhere in the trees. In his mind, this was just another corporate skirmish. Another faceless entity trying to squeeze him while he worked his charm, told his stories, and kicked the can down the road for another year. He believed he'd shake hands, make promises, float projections, and walk out still in control. Arrogance is a beautiful thing when you're counting on it. I gave him 48 hours. Just enough time to induce panic. Too short to find alternatives. Too long to ignore. And while he prepared his speeches, I remembered why I hadn't fought back sooner. Why I had disappeared so completely that even my own family accepted the story he told about me. People always assume it was the baby. It wasn't. I didn't leave because I was pregnant. I left because of a signature. 18. My father made me corporate secretary of GBU development. He said it was a formality. A resume builder. Something to make me look serious in boardrooms someday. He slid a stack of papers across the table and told me to sign where the tabs were. I trusted him. That was my mistake. Buried in that stack were personal guarantees for high-risk commercial loans he had already decided would fail. When his credit began to crack, he used mine instead. Clean, young, untouched. A fresh vein to tap. When I finally understood what I had signed, I confronted him. He called me hysterical. Told me I didn't understand business. Told me to focus on my little life and let the men handle things. Then he told the country club a different story. That his wild daughter had disappeared. That he was heartbroken. That he had tried everything to be why the time I was 6 months pregnant, standing in a leasing office that smelled like stale coffee and bad decisions. My credit report was already destroyed. I had the deposit. I had an employer letter. My coat wouldn't button over my stomach. The leasing agent looked at the screen, then at me. With a mixture of pity and disgust I'll never forget. 2 weeks later, I slept in my car, every night. I wrapped my arms around my belly and promised my unborn daughter that her mother was not a failure. I just didn't have the language yet to understand the truth. I wasn't a deadbeat. I was a victim of identity theft. And the thief was the man who was supposed to protect me. That's when I learned something important about revenge. Money can be re-earned, property can be replaced. But identity theft steals dignity. It forces you to walk through the world marked as untrustworthy, while the thief remains spotless and respected. For 7 years, my father told the world I was the mistake, and my family believed I was bad with money. And I carried the shame of his greed like it belonged to me. Bankruptcy wouldn't be enough. If I crushed him financially, he'd spin it. Call himself a martyr. Blame hostile markets. Keep his dignity intact. Know I needed his signature again. But this time I wanted him to sign a confession. The email came in late that night. From his lawyer, a request to protect Gavin's Mercedes from liquidation. I laughed cold. Sharp that he was worried about his car while he was about to lose his soul. I caught my reflection in the glass. I didn't look like the girl who slept in her car anymore. I looked like the woman who owned the parking garage. And the meeting? It was scheduled for the next morning. I watched from the dark. The conference room was soundproofed, the lights off, the HD video feed crystal clear. The shell company that rented the suite traced back, quietly, legally, to me. No hacking. No tricks. Just ownership. On the table sat a laptop, its webcam angled perfectly toward the chairs. I had told them it was for silent partners in Zurich. The small green light glowed steadily. They ignored it. Gavin entered first. The stress lines on his face were deeper now. His suit hanging loose like his body had started shrinking inside itself, but the swagger was still there. He tossed his coat onto a chair with the careless confidence of a man who believed consequences were for other people. Justin followed. The baby's father, puffy. Badly. The kind of man expense accounts destroy slowly. He had traded his own child for a mid-level management position in a failing company and still thought he'd come out ahead. Saturday Gavin mocked the office. Said it was a waste of money. Venture capital cosplay. The G-Build name still means something, he said. Then he explained his plan. Take the liquidity. Put out the immediate fires. Refinance in 6 months. And there it was. The confession: he wasn't fixing the business. He was cycling the debt. A junkie looking for his next hit, he demanded $50,000 wired to a Cayman account immediately. Complained about suppliers whining over invoices. Said he wasn't losing the deposit on his lake house for anyone. Fraud, spoken casually. Captured cleanly. Then he laughed, said the mess reminded him of his daughter. Mocked how she used to worry about permits and budgets. When Justin said my name, Gavin's voice dropped an octave. Do not say my name. He called me weak. Said I couldn't handle pressure. Speculated I was probably waiting tables in some dive bar in Ohio. A bad asset, he said. A write-off. I stared at the pixelated image of his face. He didn't see a daughter. He saw a line item that didn't return profit, and my hand hovered over the microphone. But screaming is for victims. Executioners stay quiet until the blade drops. The door opened. Marcus entered with the calm of a man who knew exactly how the game ended. He placed a heavy leather binder on the table. Gavin flipped through it impatiently, like an addict reaching for the needlepoint. $450,000. Clean slate. Regional banks satisfied. Marcus slid a gold Mont Blanc pen across the table. Probably bought on credit. Gavin hesitated. Flipped back to clause 1. Form Y heart hammered. Default. Acceleration. Marcus checked his watch. Looked bored. Wire window closes at 4, he said. Miss it. Funds sit in escrow all weekend. Re-underwriting Monday. Higher rates. There was no wire window. I controlled the money. Fear 1. Gavin signed, large, looping, arrogant. Justin leaned in eagerly as witness. And with that flourish, he handed me a weapon, a confession of judgment. Legal in New York commercial lending. He waived everything. File. Counsel. Noticed he pre-authorized me to pull the trigger. That's when I walked in tailored charcoal suit. The room went dead. Gavin looked up irritated, then recognized me. Color drained from his face. I told him to sit, I said. Justin protested. Private meeting. VM Holdings, I said calmly. Valerie Marie. Then I smiled. Did you seriously not check the LLC filing? Gavin tried to recover. Said buying the debt made me his partner. 6 months before payment, I slid a manila envelope onto the table. High-resolution photos from a Newark repossession yard. The excavators. The cranes, already gone. He had pledged collateral he didn't possess. Default wasn't 6 months away. IT was immediate. Execute, I told Marcus. The affidavit was already filed. Judgments entered. Counts frozen. Cards dead. Repo truck rolling for the Mercedes. Gavin collapsed, tried to invoke fatherhood. You were my father when you forged my signature and left me sleeping in a car, I said. You weren't a father. You were a bad investment. And I just liquidated you. Justin stood smiling. Process server entered. Emergency custody order. Sole custody of Lily. Based on Gavin's affidavit calling me unstable. They thought they'd won. Then I asked about the retainer. Justin held up the check. I read the routing number. Frozen 4 minutes ago. The check bounced. The lawyer walked. Perjury admissions recorded. I stood. Leave. Justin crumpled the papers and walked out. Gavin lingered. I gave him nothing. He shuffled away quietly. That a man who sold his soul and got nothing.